Okay, so now we're going to talk about part 2. So we're going to talk about how to use formulas and some interesting little techniques for Google Sheets. If you want to follow along, right, just open up the outline notes for part 2. And then you'll also need your class exercise. The Google Sheet you developed while doing this exercise, you'll need to use that. Okay, so we're going to work on that. Mine's in my drive. Here's my class exercise. Okay, you can see I have functions, group seating, grading, and then flashcards. Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about are maxes and mins. So let's do, how about a max and then a min. Okay, and I'm going to do a line on these. So I want to find the maximum value and the minimum value in this set of data. Now you have choices. You can insert, so there are 5 functions here, or you can get more functions. So you can just insert functions, or remember you can just type them too. So I'm going to do max, and as soon as you type, it's going to put matches that it thinks you might want. So I want a max. So I can either finish typing or just click max. I click and hold and I highlight all the cells that I wanted to check for the max. I close my parentheses and hit enter. So the maximum value in that whole list is 94. I do the same thing for min. And I hit enter. I'm going to put these as bold just so I know they're kind of special. Now here's the beauty of Google Sheets. If I click and hold these and I drag all the way across to all the columns, it's going to find the max. It's going to copy that formula to every single column. So now this found the max of this column and this found the min. So here's the max and min of column E, and then column F and column G have all their maxes and mins as well. Okay, so that's the beauty of Google Sheets. All right, so we can find max and min. Let's, for some reason, let's find the sum. So actually, I'm going to do a few of these. I'm going to do these all. So I'll hit equals sum, and then I'll close my parentheses. So the sum of all those is 515. Right? If I want to find the sum of all of them, I could. Let's do an average. Okay, so I'll equal average. I want this one. So the average is 85.83333. I don't need all those decimals, so I'm going to delete some of the decimals. Let's go down to 2 decimals. And then I'll scroll across. And you'll notice what happened. 2 things. It copied the formula and also copied my format for the decimals. Okay, so those are my average. Let's say I want a standard deviation. Equal STDEV, standard deviation. On that. And I don't need all those decimals. Let's only go down to 2. All right, so now I have the average and then the standard deviations. Okay, so that's how I can do some formulas, some quick formulas to try to figure out test averages and my homework averages, standard deviations, my maxes and my mins. The sum was just to show you what's going on. I don't know that I ever really do a sum. It's helpful if you want to calculate your own averages. Okay, one little trick. Let's say for some weird reason I wanted to change these to percents. So I don't recognize this as 85.83 as a percent. You'll notice if I click the percent button, it'll change it to 8,000. Right? So if I do Control Z. So a nice little trick here is, let's take my average, let's divide by 100, so I'll make it a decimal, and then I can click and change that to percent. So what I get is the nice percent symbol. So if you do want to change things to percent, then a trick is you just divide it by 100 and change it to percent. Okay, so now let's actually work on this class grade. So let's say I want to calculate the final grade, and we'll make it easy. So let's say that tests, are worth, let's do 75%, and homework is worth 25%. Okay, so what I'd want to do is I need a test average and a homework average. So I'm going to actually go in here. I want to make these so they fit. Okay, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to insert a column to the left. I'm going to do it twice. And now here will be my test average, and here will be my homework average. Okay, so now to do the test average, I'm going to do equals. I want average. And now I want this. Then I'll put a comma. And I'll do E3. Okay, so if you want to do more than one thing spaced out, you put commas. I hit enter. You can see the average between 85 and 89 is 87. And then to fill the formula, I I just scroll down. So that's all the test averages. And I want homework average. I'm going to do the same thing. I want average. I want this cell and then this cell. Okay, so that's the average there. And then those are all the averages for the homework. I forgot about the final exam. So let's make our final exam. So let's make tests. Let's see if we can do this. So tests will be 50%. Homework will be 25, and the final exam will be 25. So now for my final exam, my final grade, I'm going to do equals. I need 50% of tests, so 0.5 times my test average, plus I need 25% of homework, 0.25 times the homework grade, plus 25%, 0.25 times final exam. Right, hit enter. So then here's my final grade. Right, if I click on it, you can see exactly, they color code it nicely. So I have 50% times the orange, I have 25% times the purple, and 25% times the teal. If I fill them in, then I get all my student grades. Say I don't want 3 decimals, I just want 2, so I can go to 2. If for some reason you want to do the percent thing again, so you don't, I don't know, like the 87.88, you actually want to see the percent. And what you would do is take all those numbers, divide by 100, right? And here's the beauty of it. Let's change that to a percent. I don't have to do it for each one. I can just drag my formula down again. It'll change all the existing formula. Okay, so now here I have all the percents and I have the final grade. Well, let's see if people have an A. Okay, so I want to know who has an A. Okay, so I'll make that center line. Shrink it down a little bit. I'm going to put a little border on it. Okay, so now what I want to do is, if your grade is above a 90, right, since these are percents now, so if you like the percent, you just have to make sure you're not going to put a 90, you're going to put a 0.90. I'm okay not having the percents, so what I'm going to do is get rid of the 100. I'm going to click off of this so it's not a percent, so I'm going to make it automatic again. So I'll know that these are percents. So then what I'll do is, I'm going to do what's called an if statement. And I'll go down here and I'll write what the if statement's all about. So an if statement has a criteria. It has what do you do if you're true, and then what you do if it's false. Okay, that's my if statement. So I want to know if the grade is above a 90. So I'll put equals, because it's a formula. I'll type if, parentheses. My criteria is I want to check to see if this cell is greater than 90. This is, a 90 is an A, so I'm going to put greater than or equal to 90. What happens if it's true? If it is greater than or equal to 90, I want you to put an A. And anytime we return text, we got to put it in quotes. Okay? If we were going to return a number, we don't have to put it in quotes. So if it's true, return an A. If it's false, I don't want you to return anything. So I'll put double quotes, which means nothing. And the parentheses and hit enter. Scroll down, you can see the only 2 A's I have, it shows me how many A's. And I can do this for B's, for C's, for D's, all that good stuff. All right, I can just have multiple columns. If you're clever about your if statements, you can nest them and put them all in one column. So let's count. All right, I'm going to move this down a little bit, so I'll get my hand. So another thing is I want to know how many A's I have. Okay, so I can use something called a count if. So let me write down what that's all about. So your count if, right, is going to be the range and then the criteria. All right, so I want to count equals count if this range, so that's my range, I want to know if it equals an A. Enter. You can see I have 2 A's. So it's a nice little kind of shortcut to figure out how many A's and B's you have, or to count anything. So a count if is nice. Okay, so those are a few little kind of tricks that you can use to help you determine grades and calculate things. Okay, another thing we can do is we can use Google Sheets to do seating charts. Okay, I want names and tests, so I'm not going to type them all in again. So my names, I'm going to Control C, copy. I'm going to paste them. I want IDs and test1, so this is together. I'll copy them all together. Keep in mind I didn't have to do that. Let me just show you the other way. If I have, names, I could have gone equals, go to functions, the first name. I can do equals, go to my function tab, test1, and then equal, go to my function tab, ID, and highlight them all and drag them down. So I could have actually linked them to the function one, which isn't a bad way to go, because then you'll notice if I change anything in the function, so let's change Jack to Jack J. Okay, you'll notice my first set, nothing happened, but my second set, Jack J, has changed. So it's a way you can link things so that if you change one, it changes everything. Okay, so not a bad way to go. I'm going to get rid of all that though. Okay, so now what I want is I want to create a seating chart based on their test score. And I'm a little kind of out of whack here. So what I want to do is I want to sort this whole thing by their test score. I'm going to go in descending order. So you'll notice if I go to data, I can sort the sheet, which I don't want to sort. I want to sort my range. So if I sort my range, I only sort by column A. I don't want to do that. I want to sort by column B. So I'll go right below and do sort range. So data has a header row. It doesn't because I just selected my data. I didn't select the headers. And I want to sort by column B. And I want to go in descending order. So I hit sort, and that's how I can actually sort within certain ranges. Okay, within certain columns too as well. So on groups of 3, I want a high, I want a middle, and I want a low value test score on each group. Okay, and now here I'll color code. Here are my high values. I'll make them red. Here are my middle values. And then here are my low values. Okay, and now I want one of each. So I want Jenny, Joe, and Sue to be in a group because it's one high, one medium, one low, and then Alice, Jack, and Mike to be in a group. All right, so to illustrate this, let's do this. Let's put groups. And I want Jenny, Joe, and Sue, and I'll use their ID. So 4, 6, and 2. I want a 4, a 6, and a 2 to be in a group. And here I add some weird formatting, so I'm going to delete that and just make sure when I highlight, I have automatic. So I want a 4, a 6, and a 2. Did it again, so I'm going to go back to format. I want it to make sure that it knows this is just text. And then I'll do the same thing here. Let's format to text. Okay, and now I'll have 5, 1, and 3. Okay, so those are my groups. Okay, and I'm going to do it based on their IDs, and I'll show you why in a second. So this is the little trick. All right, so now I want to actually create a seating chart. So to create a seating chart, I need two things. I need a staging area. Merge these cells. I'll go center align. So now I'll set up my desk. So here's a desk. I'm hitting command now. Here's a desk, and hold command. Don't let go because that'll let you group more than one at a time. So that's how my desk will be configured. And now I can go and I can border them all. So those are all my desks. And let's say I want high here. So my first group will be 4, 6, and 2. Okay, so I'll have high, medium, and then low. And then my second group I'll have 5, 1, and 3. Okay, so these are my groups. So this is what I call the staging area. Right? This isn't actually my seating chart. So I'm going to put my seating chart right here. So I'll merge these, center align. That's my seating chart. I want the same desks, the same groups as I have here. So I'll again hold command, don't let go. I'll click them all. I'll border them. Okay, now we're going to do what's called VLOOKUP, vertical lookup. So this is VLOOKUP. And VLOOKUP needs a criteria. What do you want to look up? It needs a range. Then it needs a return column. And then the last one, you're always going to type false. Okay, so what do you want to look up? I'm going to put equals VLOOKUP. You can see it's right there. I want to look up whatever's in this cell. So check what's in that cell. And I want to look it up from this particular range. And then if you find it, what do you want to return? Do you want to return column 1, column 2, or column 3? So if I find the value 4 in this cell, I want to return the name, which is in the third column. So I'm going to put a 3. That's the column I want to return. And always just type false. Then I hit enter. You can see it looked up 4, and it found Jenny. You can see if I change this to a 5, it should put Alice. So you can see it's automatically linked now. So I don't have to keep typing in the names, I just type in the numbers. Okay, so I'm going to do center align. Okay, one thing I want you to notice, so we're going to just, I'm not going to type that formula in all the time. I'm going to drag, right, and fill to the right, and now I get an error. Okay, and there's one special thing when you do these, you need to make a note of this. This is A2 to A7, which is this whole range. You'll notice what happened is it changed to B2 to D7. It changed my range. Okay, so now how we actually can fix this is we put dollar signs. So if you put a dollar sign in front of a letter or a number, Excel will not change that letter or number when you fill. Okay, so I want it to be A2. I don't want to change A or the 2. I don't want to change the C or the 7. So I want it to always be A2 to C7. Okay, so the dollar sign lets Google Sheets know that it's not going to change that number or that letter. So now when I drag, you can see I do get Joe because now it's A2 to C7. All right, so now I'll click all this. I'll drag all the way down. I have filled, so I don't want these seats, so I can just delete, delete, delete. And then I'm going to actually get rid of, so my fill kind of messed up my borders. I'm going to get rid of all my borders. And I'll click all my names again. And now you can see that I have a seating chart that is not hooked to names, it's hooked to IDs. So you can see here's 6. I have Joe and Joe. I wanted a 4, 6, and 2. So this should be a 4. So if I type a 4, I get Jenny back. Okay, so now that you set it up like this, if you set it up one time like this, it's very easy to change seats. So let's say I want this one to be 2 and this one to be 6. Then it just changed all the names. Right? Or maybe I want Sue and Mike to switch. So I'll change this to a 3 and this to a 2. And then Mike and Sue have switched. Okay, so it's a very easy way to make a seating chart. Right? It takes a little bit to set up the first time, but once you have it, all you have to do is type in the numbers. So type in their IDs and you have a seating chart. Okay, if you want to print your chart, what you can do is you can highlight your seating chart, go to File, go to Print, and then you're going to print just the selection. Okay, so then it's just going to print what I highlighted. It's a way that I don't have to print all this kind of setup, this backstage stuff. I can just print what I want. All right, so that's VLOOKUP, and that's seating charts. Okay, let's go to grading. So Excel actually is great in grading. And this is what we'll talk about on the add-on. Someone's written a program to help you grade. So what I do, I have a 3-question quiz here, and I have my 6 names. What I want to do is grade each column. So I'm going to insert a column to the left. I'm going to insert a column to the left here. If you hit Command Y, it'll always redo the last thing that you've done. So Command Y is a nice little shortcut. And now what I want to do is grade. So I'm going to make these grades. I'm going to do this one for 5 points. And these are all grades, so I want to let myself know I'm grading. I'll change it to red. And then I'll make this 3 points. I'll change it to red. And the last one I'll make 2 points. I'm going to center align all these. Change them to red. Do bold. And then I'll do my border. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to grade these answers. So here the question was, what's 2 times 2? So the answer is 4. So I'll put equals if this cell equals 4. So if it's true, then I want to give them 5 points. If it's false, if they're wrong, I want to give them 0 points. Okay, so remember our if statement is what's the criteria, So if what's true, then do this. If what's false, do this. So I hit enter. You can see 4 is true, so they get 5 points. And I click and fill, and it just graded everyone's first question. Okay, and that's the power of Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. So now I'll do the same thing. Here I have 2 times 3, that's 6. So I want to do if this equals 6. And it equals a number, so I don't need the quotes. Now if it's true, I'm only going to give them 3 points. If it's false, I'll give them 0. Okay, so if they're right, they get 3. If they're wrong, they get 0. I click and drag. You can see, right, I have 3 wrongs and 3 rights. And now what's the color of the sky? So equal if. So now it's this cell. This is text though, so I can't just type blue, I have to put it in quotes. Right, so I'll put blue, and it doesn't make a difference, it'll match the case, so this is not case sensitive. If they're right, give them 2. If they're wrong, give them 0. You can see they're right. And I have 2s and 0s. Okay, let's look if I hadn't put it in quotes. What's going to happen? You can see I have an error. Lets me know, hey, the name is weird. Right? You have a text that should be in quotes. Okay, so now I've just graded the entire test. So now let's actually get a score. So I'm going to do their score. I'm going to center a line. I'm going to make them all bold. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm just going to. Okay, and so now what's their score? So I'm going to add up their points and then divide by the total. Okay, so I'm going to do equals, do parentheses. I want this plus this plus this. All divided by the total, so 5, 3, and 2 is 10. That person has a 70%. Okay, and since this is a decimal, I'll change it to a percent. I'll scroll, and then I've just figured out everybody's grade. So that's a quick way you can actually grade and calculate scores. Okay, so if you wanted a little bit more freedom, what I can do is link my grading to the points up here. So I want 5 points, 3 points, 2 points. So now, if B2, if this is true, I want to give them 5 points, but I don't want to give them the 5 points here. I want to give them what's in this cell. And now I don't want this cell to change, so I'm going to put a $sign by the 1. So I always want it to be C1, and since I'm only going to drag down, you can see it's always going to keep it to C1, 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 C1. So now my grading is actually linked to the score. So if I wanted to change it and say I want to make these 3, you can see it changed all the scores. So that's a way that I can have more flexibility on how I grade. So if I did that here, I'm going to do this. Instead of a 3, I want E1. I'll put a $sign because I want E1 to change. Okay, and here I don't want a 2. I want G1. Put a $sign. I don't want the 1 to change. Okay, and now my scores, instead of dividing by 10, I'll divide by this plus this plus this. Okay. And now what happened? I have a 70, I have 100, and then I have 266. So I did something weird. The issue was now my 1s are changing. So you'll see if I go to the next one, now they're 2s. Okay, I don't want them to be 2s, so I'm going to put my $sign at all of these 1s. And then you'll see as I fill, I have all my scores. Now you can see what happens. Let's say I change this to 10. How do my scores change? My 70 is now 41. Right? My 100's 100. So my scores have actually changed quite a bit. What if I made them all 5s? Right? Then I have different scores. So it's just a way to get more flexibility in your grading. Okay, and now that we graded, let's do this. Let's do our max. Let's find our min. Let's find our average. Let's find our standard deviation. I'll left align those. So that equals max. All those. Equals min. And equals average. Equals standard deviation. don't need all those decimals, so I'm going to go just to 2. And I want that. This is the only one that's not a percent, so I'll change to percent. All right, there's my max, my min, my average, my standard deviation. Let's do actually one more thing here. This is a little bit more advanced. Let's look at our letter grade. All right, so what I can do is I'm going to do an if. So I want to know if this is greater than or equal to 90, and now I have decimals, so I need to do 0.90 or 0.9. Then I want to put A. Okay. So if it's not greater than 90, that means it's going to be less than 90. So I'm going to do another one. So if. So I'm going to nest these if statements. So now that I know it's not, so if it's false, I'll be here. If it's greater than or equal to 80, then I'll put a B. All right. Now if it's false, I know it's less than 80, so I'll do another if. If this is greater than or equal to 70, I'll put a C. Now I know it's less than 70 if it's to this point, so if this is greater than or equal to 60, I'll put a D. Now if it's less than 60, I know it's an F. Now I just need to close all these parentheses. So 1, 2, 3. You can see it highlights where I'm closing, and then I'm at my last one, so I hit enter. So this is a D, and then I drag and fill. You can see now it'll calculate all the A's, the B's, the C's, the D's, all that good stuff. Okay, so it's a little bit more advanced. And then you can count all those if you want to, your count ifs. Okay, all right, that's grading, kind of overview of grading. Last thing we're going to do are flashcards. Let's say we have some questions and some answers, and we want to generate some flashcards. What I would do first is let's resize these. So let's make them a little bit bigger. I'll make them twice as big. And then we'll also make them a little bit bigger. Now I want to center align these, right, and vertical center align. Okay, so now here are our flashcards. Now it's common that we cut on the dotted lines and we actually fold on the solid. So if you want students, if you're going to print this, you want them to cut and fold. Let's change our border. Let's do dashed. Okay, and then I'll do my border. So now they would cut the whole thing. If you want them to cut the whole thing, that's great. But we don't want them to cut this middle. Right, so let's go back to border. Let's change the solid now. And what I'll do is highlight it all, and I'll change the middle to a solid. So now they'll know to cut around the border, but they won't cut the middle. So now they'll have a set of flashcards which they can tape together or glue together. So it's an easy way you can make flashcards. And again, if you wanted to print this, you just highlight it all. You print, and you only want to print the selection. And we'll just print the selection. Okay, and then they know where they can, cut, paste, and they can fold, all that good stuff. If it happened that we were a little too small with our cell, this is where we'd go to wrap text. Okay, and then I'd center align. You can see now I can have questions that are a little bit longer, but it'll actually, wrap them. Okay, so it's just a nice little way you can make quick flashcards. If you wanted to, we can make this a little bit more advanced. So what I could do is I could actually set up a staging area and then a flashcard area. So I'll make my flashcards a little bigger. I just like to label things so I know what's going on. These are my flashcards. Okay, and here's my staging area. I don't need this to be as big maybe. Okay, and so my questions here are, I can put them here, right? So here's 2 times 2, 2 times 3. Well, these are going to be my questions, so I'm just going to cut and paste. Right, so I'll edit and paste special. I just want the value. And those are my questions. Here are my answers, 6. And then yes, it is. And now I can actually link these. So I'll do equals this cell, right, equals this cell, and then so forth. So now what I'll do is if I ever change a question, let's say I want 2 times 5, it automatically changes my flashcards. Okay, so I can set it up so I can link them to kind of a staging area, and then the flashcards will be the flashcards. Okay, so it's that's the power of Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel, is when we link things, we can always just make multiple iterations and do quick changes. Okay, another thing we do are kind of math tables. Let's add a sheet. Let's do our math tables. So maybe we want to do a multiplication table. So let's say we're going to do a 10 by 10. So we're going to do a 10 by 10 multiplication table. So we'll start and do 1, 2, 3. Right now to do them all, I can do the intuitive part. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to resize these a little bit. And then I want them all to be center aligned. Okay, and I'm going to actually bold these. Alright, so now I want 1 through 10. And I'll type in a few. All the way to 10. And I go bold. Do center align again. Make this smaller. Okay, and now here is my table. So I don't need to border it yet, but I just want to show you. Here's my table. And so now what do I want? I want this one times all of these. Right, so I'm going to do equals. I want this times this. Okay, and I'm going to drag this to the right, so I don't want the A to change. So you'll see that's 1, and now when I drag, I have 1 times 2. You can see exactly what happened. So A4 is still the same, but it multiplied by C3 now. So I go down, so I have 1 to 10. And so what I really want to do is drag this down to fill my whole table. But you'll notice 10 times 10 is not, a number that's so big it can't even fit in the box. Well, 3 times 10 is not 60. Okay, so there's an issue with my fill. The issue is this, right? I have A4 times K3, and then I need A5, which is fine, but not K4. I want K3 again. Okay, so that's my problem. So now, all of my 3's, I need to have dollar signs. Okay, so I need to change it because I want them to stay 3's. Okay, so B3, C3, all the way to K3, I need it to stay a 3. So now I can go in and change all these and add a dollar sign, or I can do this find replace. This is where find replace comes in extremely handy. So say anytime you see a 3, put a dollar sign 3. Okay, and make sure you look in the formulas because that's where I'm changing. I'm changing the formulas. Replace them all, hit done. And now you'll see here's B dollar sign 3, C dollar sign 3, D dollar sign 3, then I'm good. Okay, so the dollar signs are huge. The find and replace will save you a lot of time. So now when I fill, I'm going to get my multiplication tables. Okay, and I can do anything, right? So when I do math tables, you can do addition, subtraction, anything you want. So when you do the first row, you put a dollar sign by the actual letter, and then you need to change the second piece to put a dollar sign in front of the number before you actually fill down. Okay, but that's a quick way you can do, math tables, any kind of operations. Okay, let's do one more. Let's do some charts here. So I'm going to add one more sheet. I'm going to call this my charts. Okay, and I'm going to put, let's go back to functions. Let's see, how about their name all the way to final exam. So I'll copy that, I'll paste it. Okay, and we'll call this actually not charts, we'll call this tracking students. So we're going to create charts to see how our kids are doing. Alright, I'm going to highlight all this. I'm going to double click to auto size. So what I'm going to do is I want their name. I'm going to get rid of the J. I don't need the J. Okay, I want to do their name. So I'm going to create a chart by their name. I want test 1, test 2, and then their final exam grade. Right, so this is what I want to actually do a chart of. So I'll go to Insert Chart. So right now as it's set up, this looks great. I know Jack, I can see that there's a nice progression from test 1 to test 2 to the final. So if I didn't want this to be a horizontal bar chart, I can scroll down and make it a vertical chart. Okay, so this looks nice as a bar chart. I can actually see the tracking. So this looks good. Let's customize. Let's do student exams. Okay, I'll keep it bold. 16 is fine. The color's fine. The legend looks good. Background, white's fine. I can stack them. Right, so if I wanted to click this button, it actually saves me from having to click this stacked bar chart. I could do either way. I could reverse them. So I have the reverse order. Right. Okay, so let's do that. So let's do insert. So let's do this. So here I have Jack, Sue, Mike, Jenny. They're not in alphabetical order, and I'd like them to be. So when I highlight all this stuff, I'm going to go to Data. I'm going to sort by the column. I'm in column A is fine, so I'll do ascending order. And then you can see what happens. And this is the beauty of Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. It automatically changed my chart. Okay, so I have a nice chart. Okay, and I don't want this to be on my page right here, so I want to make it a whole new sheet. Move to own sheet. And you can see I have chart 1. I'll name this bar chart. Okay, so let's go back to Student Tracker. Let's do another chart. Let's insert another chart. Oops. You notice I didn't select any of the data I wanted, so let's do that. Let's go back here. So I'm going to actually get rid of this. Okay, so I'll go name. I'm going to add another one. I want to do test 1. Oops, I messed that up, so I'll go and do test 1. Add another one. Here's test 2. Add another one. Here's final exam. Okay, hit OK. Okay, let's say I don't want a bar chart this time. Let's go to charts. I want a line chart. Now you can see things are a little goofy. So I want the legend to be the names. And the first thing though, I'll look here. I have name right here as an actual data point. So I'm going to use the row 1 as headers. And now I'm going to switch rows to columns. And then you can see now I have the actual test 1, test 2, test 3, and I have all the names here in the legend. So now I can see kind of what each student does. Right, so it looks like Mike and Sue, they continuously progress nicely. Even Jack and Joe might progress kind of nicely, but then Alice and Jack, they hit a downward spiral after test 2, so their exam average wasn't consistent with their upward trajectory. Okay, and then custom. I'll do student exams again. Okay, and everything looks good. Maybe I'll change this color to blue so I can see the difference. I'll insert. There we go. And then I'm going to make this a new page as well. So now this one is our line graph. Right, so it's on our bar chart, it's our line graph. Right, so I have bar chart here, and then my line graph here. I don't really like the background color, so I'm going to go back here and change that to white. Update. And then I'm good. And those are some interesting things you can use Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel for in the classroom.